Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of The Skull Mug, the show in which I drink beer and just talk about random bullshit that crosses my mind that I decide I want to talk about. I uploaded the last episode of this yesterday, shot it the day before, and I've been getting back into doing this recently because I currently have COVID, of course, or at least I think I do. I've tested negative, but if you watched the last episode, I talked about that. Sleep in the same bed as my girlfriend who currently has it. So there's a very good chance that I have it too. That's why my voice sounds a little bit funny. But yeah, on this episode, we're going to be doing Noire by Domaine Berthiaume. Now, this is a dry stout. It's 6.5% alcohol. And I really love the artwork on here. You have this really pretty, very well-drawn dark elf character who's gracing the side of the can there. There's like skulls down there at the bottom of the art. On the back you have the Domaine Berthiaume logo, which is like a shield. Very fantasy inspired, of course, and it's in French on the back, the description, so I can't really read it. But yeah, this is brewed in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, obviously in Quebec. And yeah, that's pretty much all the information that's on here. So, without further ado, we're gonna crack this baby open. Yep, got some ice cubes in the trusty titular skull mug. Let's go ahead and give it a pour. I've learned that you're not supposed to pour too fast, and that's part of the reason why it bubbles up a little bit if you pour, like sometimes when I've poured in the past. But, oh, look at that. You might actually get the full can in there this time. Oh, baby, yes, look at that head. Look at that. That is fucking sick. That might be the best pour that I have done on this channel so far. I'm getting better at it. It's definitely chocolatey, of course. I feel like a lot of stouts are typically pretty chocolatey. It's definitely sweet. Definitely some hints of coffee in there as well. It's dark, but like it's not too dark. It's just like a little roasted. Maybe not as dark as some other stouts that I've tried on this show before. It's kind of like mid-tier, you know? That's basically where I'd put this, but it's pretty fucking good. And of course it makes sense. I mean, dark beer for a dark elf. And the reason I chose this beer for today, I've had this in my fridge now for like, I don't know how long. It's been in there for a very, very long time. This is about time I fucking drank it, honestly. The reason I chose it is because I wanted to talk about something that's very close to me on this episode, that being the novel that I'm working on right now. So those of you who know me closely, excuse me, know that I've been working on a fantasy novel for a very, very long time. It originally spawned from an idea that I had for a video game, like a fantasy open world role-playing game inspired by the likes of The Elder Scrolls or other games of that nature. But eventually I kind of realized that, you know, it's probably very unlikely that I'm going to get to create this vision in exactly the way that I want. So I decided the best way to get this story and this world across is to write a novel. And I don't intend for it to be just one standalone novel. Like, I want this to be a very long saga, which is why I've really buckled down and started working on it a lot more recently. It's something that's kind of cut into some of my other projects, that including, music and YouTube, playing video games, whatever. But it's something that's important to me, and I feel like if I didn't release anything taking place within this world that I've built, I'd be really disappointed in that by the time I get to my deathbed. So I've really been putting a lot of work into writing this novel. The working title so far is The Black Relics. I'm not going to go into the lore and explain what that title means, because it can get in depth, and also I don't really want to spoil too much. I want the reader to get as much new information from this as possible. And also kind of tying in with why I chose this beer to drink today, the main character is a dark elf. Her name is Melithril, and that name comes from the character that I used to do my first ever playthrough of Skyrim, like ever. When the game first came out back in 2011, I created a Dunmer character, named her Melithril, and that was my very first playthrough of that game. And since then I've logged so many fucking hours into Skyrim, it's actually like kind of embarrassing. But that first playthrough served as the inspiration for me writing this novel. And I've just had a very strong fascination with elves, ever since watching the first Lord of the Rings film when I was like a preteen, I guess, when that movie first came out. Ended up reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy a few years later, and then it was around that same time, well, I guess a few years after that, that I got into the Elder Scrolls series and started delving into the lore of that, and just became really invested in the idea of like creating my own fantasy world that takes bits and pieces from all these others, but also adds my own flavor to it. And the basic plot of this novel is just that this character, Melithril, she's, in this world they're called night elves, not dark elves, just a minor difference that kind of ties in thematically to some things that are going on in the plot and the narrative. She's a night elf, she is a thief, like by trade, that is her job, that is what she does, that's how she gets by on a day-by-day basis, and she's very good at what she does. Except that in recent years, she has been kind of falling off a little bit in terms of skill. Like, she's been experiencing a lot more blunders, a lot more fuck-ups lately. And she gets this job, a contract to steal a gemstone from a nobleman, and it's a really high-paying contract, and she knows that, if I can do this job and accomplish it, then I can get back on top, I can reclaim this glory that I've lost and make up for all the mistakes that I've made in the past. And the other part of this character is that she's also kind of like I don't want to say a piece of shit, like that's usually how I've described it to friends of mine who have asked about her in the past or asked about this novel and the themes and plot of it. But in all honesty, she's not really a piece of shit. Like, she's more like a Jack Sparrow kind of character, where she fucks up a lot and she makes a lot of mistakes, and she is a scoundrel. Like, she's willing to like cheat, steal, and lie in order to get ahead. Of course, I mean, she is a thief, but she still has a heart of gold, and she's very fond of partying. She's very licentious. She's very into doing like illicit substances that exist in this universe. She drinks a lot, smokes a lot, just all that kind of stuff. But of course, makes up for it by doing like rigorous exercise to try and like stave off the effects of those things. And she basically uses all of the money that she gets from these contracts to just go on like wild benders, and she's kind of like a legend in the underground thievery, I guess, community or scene. I don't know if you could call that a scene, but you know what I'm trying to say. She's kind of a legend for like just being a wild, insane party animal. But when she goes on this contract, she ends up she ends up biting off more than she can chew. And as the story progresses, she ends up getting embroiled in this conflict between two opposing groups within this other nation that she's not from. And she's there basically, getting torn between two sides of this conflict, this political conflict, this religious conflict. There's religious aspects to it too. There's a lot of commentary on religion in this novel. And all while this is happening, she's being pursued by bounty hunters who are basically trying to take her and either deliver her alive to a prison or deliver her head to, I guess, whoever maintains like the bounty list in this kingdom that this novel takes place in. So she's dealing with all of this, and then the twist. I don't really consider this a spoiler, but it's kind of a twist that happens like early on, is that one of these bounty hunters ends up actually joining her side and becoming a friend of hers, and they join each other on this quest. They get some other members of their party, they have this whole team, and then the whole quest to steal this gemstone, it's a linchpin of the plot of the entire saga, but it's not really that important to the first novel. It's just there to sort of set up a few things for what's going to happen later on in the wider story. But this novel is mostly about this conflict that these characters are embroiled in, and the relationships between themselves and these different philosophies from different characters kind of butting heads, and using them as a way to kind of explore these different ideas about religion and politics and just philosophy in general. I want to say so much more about it, but I really don't want to divulge too much, because again, I want to keep at least some surprises for the readers. And part of the reason I'm saying this as well is because I have an art account on Instagram where I post drawings that I've done that relate to the lore of the world that this novel takes place in. There are some other world building projects on that art account as well, but most of it is related to the Black Relics. So if you go to Akhenaten Art, at Akhenaten Art on Instagram.com, or Akhenaten on DeviantArt, Tumblr, and Facebook as well. I think it's either Akhenaten Art or Akhenaten 23, one of the other two. You'll find like all of my drawings there of just different characters, races, creatures, locations, items, weaponry, and stuff that exists in this fantasy world. And it all kind of ties back into that, but I use that as the way to kind of like talk about the lore of my world as more of an experiment in world building, and to flesh out the different, like the nitty gritty of this world that might not necessarily get fully explored in the novel itself, but be kind of used to fill in the gaps of the world building that otherwise might not be there. So if you want to learn about the world that this novel takes place in, I recommend you go and follow me on that Instagram account, or on DeviantArt, Tumblr, or Facebook, wherever you are, because that is where I post all of that shit. And in the meantime, I am working currently on the outline of this novel. I want to say that I'm about halfway through. Maybe it will be more realistic to say I'm about a third of the way through right now. But this is going to be a very long book. The outline is already at 100 pages, so it's going to be very, very dense. I know that's not for everyone. Some people like a really quick read. Some people like something that's a lot more thick. This is definitely for those people that enjoy a nice, meaty, thick fucking book that's going to take you a really, really long time to punish your way through. But I really hope that I make it engaging and enjoyable enough that people won't feel like it's a slog to get through. I've never quite talked about this before on this channel, but even though I'm a musician and I do drawings and I play video games on YouTube as well, over on my channel, Misty Walker, go over there and hit subscribe if you don't mind. My ultimate goal really is to be a published author that actually makes enough money off of doing this that I can use it as a career, because I really don't think I'm going that way with music. I don't think I'm going that way with art. I don't think I'm going that way with YouTube, even though I always will enjoy those three things, and I'm never going to stop doing them, like, ever. I fully am committed to all these hobbies. They're super, super important to me. But writing creatively, fiction, is honestly what I want to do the most, because I think it's what I've committed the most time to doing, even though I don't have a lot of actual, like, physical work to show for it, Like, I have all of this world building for the Black Relics, as well as I have another fantasy world that's kind of inspired by Brutal Legend, as well as I guess just heavy metal culture in general, called Ironbound, which is a bit of a generic name, so I might change that in the future. There's a sci-fi one called Lightyear, and a post-apocalyptic Wasteland one, obviously inspired by Fallout, as well as Mad Max and other post-apocalyptic media, called Second Strike. So those are like my 4 main world building projects, and I have some others that I've flirted with, like doing a cyberpunk dystopian future one, as well as kind of like a Marvel Comics, DC Comics-esque superhero one, but those are nowhere near as important to me as the other 4. And the Black Relics is chief among those. So, yeah, that's me talking about my book, which hopefully I will finish at some point before I fucking die, God willing. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching this episode. Again, this is L'Elf Noire by Domaine Berthiaume. Pretty good brewery, honestly. Everything that I've had from these guys is really good, and I always enjoy the art that's on the cans. Very, very well done. And very tasty too, I might add. So yeah, thank you for watching. I've been your host, Greg Ravengrave. This has been The Skull Mug, episode 30, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.